Hello and welcome to Biker Bushcraft. In this video, I'm going to go through my process for planning a 3-day and 2-night trip. But first, I'd like to answer a couple of the comments that I received on my last video. River Rat Shanty Shack and Solo Loves to Fish both commented on finding gear secondhand to save some money. Great point. Over the years, I've accumulated a lot of gear at yard sales, swap meets, thrift stores, that sort of thing. It's absolutely in the spirit of biker bushcraft. Absolutely go simple, go cheap, be comfortable, but most importantly, go. I mentioned in my earlier video, what is biker bushcraft, that taking off without having a solid plan is how I've always done motorcycle tripping. Doesn't mean no plan at all. In fact, I often plan a destination and use maps to get familiar with the route and points of interest along the way. First step, though, to planning a trip is to figure out what your destination is going to be. Whether that's throwing darts at a map, or maybe it's seeing a place that you've heard about, or maybe even tying your trip into another trip you're taking, a business trip, for instance. Of course, if your business trip is to Tempe, Arizona in the middle of August, and I wouldn't recommend sidetracking to Tombstone, speaking from experience, it's bloody hot, unless you really like riding in that kind of heat. So, my next step is I check the weather. All along the route where I'm going, I want to know what the weather is. I check multiple sources for temperature, for rain. If the temps are going to be below 40 degrees, I'm probably not going to be warm enough at night in a wool blanket, so I'm going to want to bring additional warm gear. If it's going to be raining, I may want to change destination, or I'm going to want to bring additional gear, depending on the severity of the storm. But I check multiple sources so that I can make sure that I'm getting the most accurate weather reporting that I can get. I always use maps. The GPS is a great tool, and you can gain much more information from a paper map. You also don't have to worry about batteries and losing the signal and all the other things that come with using a phone or a GPS to navigate. It doesn't mean that I don't use them, but I use paper maps first. I typically plan my days at about 250 miles or less. I ride in many areas with large wildlife that can run into the road at night, and I find that it's a better plan to travel in the daylight, especially in unfamiliar areas. That also allows me to stop and set up my camp in the daylight. It's much easier to recon your camp area, find out what's there, collect firewood in the daylight than it is in the dark. Besides using maps, I also use some online resources to plan my trips. I look online to see what, if any, fire restrictions exist in the area that I plan to travel. In our state, I use the FRAP website. It tells me where the fire danger areas are, and it gives me a good understanding of where I can have a campfire and where I can't have a campfire, so that allows me to plan my trip more effectively. I also look online to find out where the public lands are around my route. This gives me an idea of where I can pull over and camp beside the road along the way. Once I plan where I'm going and know if I can have a campfire, I plan my gear and my food. Let's go over the food that I'm bringing for this trip. This trip, I've decided not to bring a cooler. I don't really like canned foods, so I put together a menu based on as many whole foods as possible and things that don't need refrigeration. For lunches, I'm going to have sourdough bread, cheese. I've got 3 kinds of cheese, 2 kinds of hard cheddar, and some hard Gouda, and then dry salami. I also carry some balsamic vinegar to go on the bread, and of course I've got butter if I need it. I considered bringing apples to go along with the lunches, or even a tomato, because all of those will travel for a couple of days, but I decided this is plenty. I'm not going to need those. For the first dinner, I'm having steak. Steak, if you freeze it, will keep just fine, and that'll last me at least to the first night. So I've got plenty of time for that to thaw out. It won't go bad. It'll probably be questionable with this thick a steak whether it's going to thaw out in time for dinner. So that's going to be my first dinner. Got a potato. I haven't decided yet how I'm going to cook it. I've got a couple of ideas, and we'll see when I'm camping what I actually do. And I've got some green beans. Maybe we'll do another story over breaking green beans. Depends on how busy I get cooking. The green beans I've got wrapped in cheesecloth so they can breathe, and all of the food goes in a burlap bag. So what's supposed to breathe will breathe. What isn't is sealed and will keep. For the first breakfast, I'm going to have salt pork and potatoes, country fried potatoes. I'm also going to have eggs. For this trip, I'm doing something a little different with my eggs. No refrigeration. These are fresh eggs. They have never been refrigerated. Fresh eggs that have never been refrigerated will keep supposedly for a week. That's been my experience. Without any refrigeration, and they won't go bad. Some people even say longer. But I'm going to also try a 18th century method of keeping eggs preserved, and that is to pack them with wood ash. I don't have my wood ash yet. I'm going to have to make that up tonight. But I'm going to pack the eggs in wood ash in the little box that I got here for them, and pack those along, and we'll see how they do. Eggs packed in wood ash typically have a good success rate, over 60%, of surviving as much as 8 months. So for 3 days, I think we're good. The second dinner is going to be salt pork, onion, and apple. And you'll see when I'm camping what kind of a recipe I put together. It's a one-pan meal. It's really good. Great camp food, a lot of energy, and fantastic taste. I also brought a couple of extra apples that I'm going to bake for dessert. I'll show you how I do those. The next morning, I'm going to have biscuits and gravy. I'm going to cook the biscuits in the fry pan. Show you how I do that. Gravy, I had to go with a package. It just made sense. I can make gravy mix. To make good sausage gravy, to make sausage gravy for the road, I couldn't think of a way to preserve the sausage without refrigeration, and so this just made sense for what I'm doing. So this is the one prepackaged thing that I had to buy. And of course I have my coffee. I'm going to carry enough for about 3 cups a day. That way I have a cup or 2 in the morning. If I want to have a cup after dinner with dessert, that leaves me enough to do that. It's always good to have extra coffee. That's one thing you don't want to run out of. And that's the food that I'm bringing for this trip. I am going to bring in both my water containers. I may pick up an extra gallon of water on my way in because I suspect I'm going to be dispersed camping. So I suspect there's not going to be a water source where I'm at. I'm going to be out in the desert. If there is, that's great, but if there's not, I want to be prepared. So when I get closer to it, I'll probably stop somewhere, pick up a jug of water, and strap it on my bike. Now the gear. So I'm bringing my standard bedroll, and you know what's in there: the tarp, the aluminum stakes, the sleeping mat, the wool blanket. I also put my down camping pillow in there. We're going to give that another shot this trip. For cooking stuff, I've got my cast iron pan, stainless steel plate, my Toaks pot, my Toaks stove with the spices in it, as always. I've added some more spices this time around. I found this little container, these double containers, when I was shopping around the other day, and I grabbed them, filled them up with some other spices, nutmeg, mint leaf, things that I didn't already have. And then I needed some olive oil for cooking, and I needed some balsamic vinegar for my bread and also for cooking. And these are, as I'm sure many of you recognize, the little dollar booze bottles. Took them, cleaned them out, and put those in it. Works fine. It doesn't leak. They're a good amount for a couple of days camping. I also have some sugar and cinnamon mixed up in a bag for my roasted apples for my dessert. Bringing my folding saw, of course my knife, bringing my axe, and I'm desert camping, so I probably don't need the axe, but I felt like bringing it this time, so it's coming with me. Got my cordage, my bag of personal items, and I again am going to bring a dry bag for my camera gear just in case. There is no rain in the forecast, but can't be too safe. I have my headlamp, and I've got another new piece of kit. I've got an Uko candle lantern, and I used these years ago. I haven't used them in years, and I came across one in a store and told my wife I liked it, and so she bought me one. And so we're going to go ahead and bring this trip and see how it does. I'm also bringing my shovel, of course, and my coffee drip-through filter in my cup, my 2 water containers. I need to make sure that I've got enough water because there isn't going to be water available locally, and my little cutting board. On this trip, I'm a little bit gear heavy by choice. I'm planning on 3 days, 2 nights, but the area I'm camping in is one of my favorite areas of the desert. So I might get distracted, I might spend another night on the road, stop at a local market along the way. It'll accommodate the food, and you know, I'm sure I'll come back at some point. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. The items that I carry and how I prepare for a trip are what has worked for me over the years. I'm sure many of you have your own methods and things that work for you. And please feel free to share any tips or tricks that you have that you already use to prepare for your trips in the comments section. I'll be interested to read them and to learn how other people do things. And again, I want to thank everybody for watching my video. Please like it if you like it. Please share it. Please come back for more.